welcome to the latest episode of VIP's Boxing's Bell to Bell podcast. We're on about episode 191, 192. I'm not sure. It's a lot of minutes if you've been watching or listening to each episode. Great guest this week, making his debut, former British, European, Commonwealth and IBF World Middleweight Champion, now the lead commentator for Matchroom Before the Bell and a co-commentator on Dazn, which we're going to speak about on the pod, Darren Barker. Darren, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you very much for having me. I would like you to clear up exactly what episode it is, because this is a special one, as you said.
Right.
I'm honoured to be on. Thanks for having me.
One night we have Barry Jones on quite a lot, and he's good fun. Your pal, your golf pal, and someone I think you become. Obviously, I'm guessing you become pretty close to when we listen to you vibing off each other at commentary. Is that right? You're quite close with Barry now.
He's one of my really good mates now. We're out at least once a week playing golf. We have a really good chemistry when we're working. We see fights quite similar. You see the fanfare that Barry gets online, and rightly so. He sees a fight very well. He digests and breaks down a fight very well. And he's so funny. He's one of the funniest blokes I've been around. Honestly, he's so funny. But,
he doesn't try to be funny, and he makes you laugh. No. That's what it is.
Yeah. He's a top bloke, and I'm very lucky to work with him. Week in, week out.
Darren, how did you find it moving from punditry and giving your opinion to actually commentating? That's not an easy transition to make, is it?
I tell you what, John. The whole thing's a bit of a blur, really. I'll tell a story. I've told a story a few times, and I remember going to Nigel Benn's fights in 1995. I think he had 3. And one of them, I'm pretty sure, was the tragic night that he stopped Gerald McLennan. And I remember being up in the rafters with my dad, my granddad, my uncle, and maybe my brothers. And I remember looking in and around ringside and thinking, look, if I can't, because I was a young aspiring boxer, if I couldn't be a boxer, I want to be involved in that inner ringside, whether I'm a judge, a ref, a commentator, an MC. I want to be there. I love this sport. So to fast track and do what I've done as a fighter, and then to be given an opportunity a long time ago, and I couldn't even tell you the first one, and I was useless. And I think I'm a bit better now, but I'm striving for perfection, but I don't know if we'll ever get there. But to be given the opportunities, and then for Matchroom to bring me on 7 years ago, and now to be, where I'm going with it is I'm pinching myself. I feel very blessed, very honoured, and like I say, I'm always trying to be as good as I can be.
Brilliant.
There's another Barker in the background.
Yeah, it's my dog. My wife just come to the door, so it's my dog. So we'll kick on with the pod anyway. We speak for 3 minutes and then we just button it. You'll be gone in no time, Darren, and off to play with your family or play golf with Barry Jones, whatever's happening tonight. But John, have you got your clock and everything ready?
All ready to go.
All right. Round 1, I'll start us off this week. How hard is to say no? And obviously Darren's input on this would be is important. A lot of calls the weekend, I think rightly so, for Joe Joyce to retire. But I don't think us who say that realise, haven't boxed, realise how hard it must be to walk away for someone like Joe Joyce. All he's done for the last, I remember him winning the ABA, I think he might have won the ABAs in 2012 on Box Nation. When it was at York Hall, and fighting at the highest level for so long, I just don't think we can understand people who haven't boxed how hard it is to walk away. And I mention that subject because yourself, Darren, you had that one fight where you were injured, was it the back or your hip, and you just went after that. That was it for you.
Yeah. Well, blimey, it's very hard to answer this in a couple of minutes, but for me, yeah, certainly I agree with you. I think Joe Joyce should retire because he's not fighting as well as he used to be able to. And that's sad when you see a fighter diminish in not just physical, but technically everything slows down, and that's not a good thing. It sort of ruins the way people remember you. But for me personally, I probably overachieved. I achieved more than I ever dreamt I would. So I always say this: if I would have earned the money I did when I fought Sturm in my last fight, when I won the title, I never would have fought again. I instantly lost all hunger. I mean, I don't know if I can, but I'm going to say it anyway. The way I describe me fighting for a title and before I won it to afterwards was like having a bunker before and after. You know, you're just a completely different person. I didn't want to fight again. You know, I was purely doing it to look after my family. I thought I had enough to win. So for me, it was quite easy. But what I will say, in retirement, it is difficult. You know, there was numerous times that, you know, I really felt I'd lost my identity. I would say I probably went out and maybe drunk more than I should have. That's led me now to be teetotal. I've not had a drink now for over 2 years, and I can see why retired sportsmen and women do go down that road, because you've had this identity, you've been this person for so long, and all of a sudden it's gone. You're just sort of you're part of Gem Pop. You just, you know, you got to find your way in the real world, and that's tough. That's tough because I always see myself as I was a one-trick pony. I wasn't a jack of all trades. So all of a sudden, you're going into the real world thinking, wow, what do I do? So there's a lot that goes on in a retired sportsman mind. And it's difficult. So for someone like Joe Joyce, all he knows is boxing. And he'll feel that he's underachieved. I feel he's underachieved. So, yeah, it really is a tough one. Yeah, you know, I feel for him, and I feel for these fighters that have to, you know, eventually call it there.
Okay. Darren, thanks for that. Round two, over to you, John. Steve Maylett, is he underrated? You spend a lot of time at that gym, John.
Yeah, I think Steve Maylett's tremendously underrated. And I always think he has been. If you go back to the very early days when he bought Terry Flanagan, who was a unaccomplished amateur, one of Steve's friends, he got him to a world title. Terry retired after losing a little bit of hunger, I think, after losing to Regis Prograis. And Steve just plodded on in the background. He got Zach Miller, who'd never had a professional fight, Jack Rafferty, who I think was 8-0 at the time, Liam Taylor, who was plodding along, undefeated fighter, but no profile. And look where they all are now. There's 4 fighters in that gym. You've got 2 undefeated British and Commonwealth champions. Liam Taylor's fighting Conor Walker for the British title in a month or two. And Tom Rafferty's undefeated in 14 fights. It's a real hard gym. He's very demanding technically. You've got to be very fit. You've got to be very clever to do what he wants you to do. But the rewards are there. And I just think it's time Steve got a little bit more probably plaudits for what he's managing to do.
I just think he don't put himself out there, maybe, John. I mean, take Tony Sims as an example. He's been around boxing for years. It took Tony years for anyone to start talking about him, Darren. It was around your time, and he'd been in gyms for years. Yeah,
but that's Tony's personality, and obviously Steve's as well. They're not cheerleaders, and they certainly don't cheerlead about themselves. And look, there's a lot of coaches out there that do, and they want to be the star. They want to be the main attraction. And I think, I don't know Steve personally, but he strikes me as somebody like Tony, a real boxing man who loves the sport, lives and breathes it. And Tony certainly doesn't take any of his fights for granted, and he works his socks off. And he wants the fighters to get all the fanfare, and rightly so. And I think that's how all coaches should be, really. But yeah, big fan of Steve, what he's done with Zach, and what he did, as you say, John, with Terry. He deserves a massive pat on the back, and certainly more credit from not just people inside the game, but, you know, boxing fans. You know, he's an unsung hero, if you like.
Yeah. I just hope like the fashion that seems to be for fighters where they follow the successful gyms sort of kicks off, because I would like to see Steve get an accomplished fighter rather than starting from scratch.
Is that
round 3? Is that the
bell?
It's when you button. See, don't mess around, John.
Special effects there, Darren.
Darren, commentators and pundit scorecards you're going to speak about.
Yeah. So Saturday we was at the Filip Hrgović Joe Joyce fight, and I mean, this happens an awful lot. I think people watching fights back home scream and shout about scorecards that we may give or opinions we may give on fights that are happening. And I think there's a lot to take into account. One, we're not judges. We may be ex-fighters, and we know this sport inside out, but we're not judges. And what we also get as well is one view. We get one view of the ring. And, you know, when you're watching it back home, I mean, I've watched fights back, and I've watched that fight back. And look, I had Hrgović winning the fight, rightly so. I think it was a bit closer than people were making out. If you see the judges, they were sort of split as well. I mean, there was 1 6 round, one round, and one in between. So it shows you that there was a bit of inconsistency. And I think all of us at ringside we definitely had Hrgović winning the fight, but not by a huge, wide margin. I think he started the fight really well. Joe Joyce got into the fight. He was looking jaded, Hrgović, but done so well to rally back in the final part of the contest. I just think, as a whole, generally, I think people back home, sort of people at home watching it, they like to whinge, don't they? They like to whinge, and I think they need to have a bit more understanding. When you're sat there and you're looking at the ring, we do have one view, and it is difficult. I find it difficult, and people might not be able to understand this, but when you're trying to commentate while score a fight, it's not that easy, you know. Because when I'm watching the fight, I'm looking at pros and cons for both. I'm looking at insight. I'm looking at how one may be feeling. And I notice as well, when I'm commentating on a fight, I notice that I sometimes talk about the fighter that I perhaps think's losing more, because I'm looking at what they should be doing to now get themselves back into the fight. It's easy to talk about the one that's winning because they're doing a good job. So then I'm looking at, right, if I'm this guy, the opponent who's losing this fight, what can I do? What should they be doing to claw themselves back into the fight? So, look, I think people back home need to, you know, just calm down a little bit. Don't be so offended by the pundits and the commentators. We're just trying to do a job. Do you know what I mean? There is no agenda. Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, and Dazn don't sit us down and say, right, lads, you've got to fight for the home fighter. That doesn't happen.
Brilliant. Round 4, Fabio Wardley. I'm saying, if there's a fighter who does everything that comes his way, it's got to be Fabio. I can't think how long it's going to be before we have a boxer that comes from the unlicensed to make the strides that he's made almost to the top of the heavyweight division. We talk about Rocky stories and real. This is it. This guy, I remember I spoke to him once, just an interview once when I was doing media stuff, where I moved over to the other side of the fence as such, and he was saying, you know, about the unlicensed, and he said, you think, you know, you being an unlicensed fighter, you just go and have your fight. He said, it's a bit different. You're out in town at the end of that week, and the guy who's knocked you out is at the end of the bar in that pub.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's pride. But I just think there's anyone like him who's going to come along for years to come. It's almost like a Leicester City winning the Premier League, what he's achieved. And now he's going to walk out in front of 30,000 people on Dazn, Portman Road. What a night it's going to be. That is real life Rocky stuff. And that's a sort of an ism as such that we use far too much. But he deserves everything that comes his way.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? You know, to tick every box as well. You know, he's done it professionally. He's improved. He's come through the ranks. He's connected with the fans. He's a good talker. He can sell a stadium. And he's come along at the ideal time to make an inroad in the heavyweight division. I think it's phenomenal. I was trying to think back over other white-collar people who've turned over from white collars, and the only one I could think of was someone like James Moorcroft, who's a good professional, but won't get to English title level. So for Fabio getting into the world top 10 of the heavyweight rankings, I just think it's a phenomenal achievement. Big step up, though, against Big Baby Miller. You know, it's a serious fight. But, yeah, good for Fabio.
I think it's brilliant. What story? Like you say, it's incredible. It really is remarkable what he's done. And I will say that having a good amateur pedigree is fantastic. You learn the fundamentals and, you know, it really does hold you in good stead. But on the flip side, Fabio's kind of been unsport. He's been untouched. He's free to just do he pleases. He's not got this guard up where he's been so taught and fight in a certain way. He just does him. He goes out there and he looks to close the show in dramatic fashion. And I love that. You know, sometimes you can be so technically sound that you almost fight not to lose as opposed to fight to win. He goes out there trying to knock your head off. He's not worried about taking a couple to land a big shot. Punches so hard, so much self-belief, tons of personality. There's definitely a job for him after he hangs up the gloves.
Yeah.
Round 5, John, and carrying on from Fabio, other fighters that are ready to step up.
Yeah, we're saying Fabio's making a big step up here. So just the other British fighters you'd like to see tested. One jumps out for me. I want to see Sam Noakes let loose on the lightweights this year.
He's one of my ones there.
You know, he's done everything asked of him so far. And since he stepped up to title level, he's outboxed the boxer in Mendy. He's out-toughed a tough guy in Ryan Walsh, and he's ready to go. Now, I know, Sam's got 2 fights lined up. He's got an 8-rounder. Then he's got a fight against the British opponent I got sworn to secrecy on. But after that, I want to see Sam really tested. He looks like a real handful. He's adapted well. He looks like he's got more dimensions to his game than he might initially look like. And another good personality, another good character, Sam. So I would like to see Sam get his shot.
Yeah, Sam was one of mine. My other one was Callum Simpson's. I think he's well past British and Commonwealth level. And I know it was a short notice fight last time. Was it Elvis Hawker, I think it was, he fought last time. But he was a bit lackadaisical in that and switched off a little bit. I think he's ready to kick on now. Darren?
Yeah, I think, look, for me, and this might be an obvious one, but and maybe a little harsh as well, if I'm honest, because he is so young and he's a novice. But Moses Atama, and the reason I say that is I think he's the future of the heavyweight division. But I need to see one thing, and that's his chin tested. And probably why I'm picking Moses is I'm getting carried away and I'm getting extremely excited about him because I honestly think if he can hold a shot, he's the future of the division. I really think there's something special about this kid. And yeah, it is probably a little harsh that, you know, I want to see him tested, but he's that good. He's never lost. Amateur pro, he's never been beaten. You know, he's a remarkable talent and he's someone that I am thrilled when I see his name. Look, I'll be commentating on Josh Taylor Esserman. And as soon as I see his name on the bill, I'm over the moon. I'm buzzing. So, yeah, he's certainly someone for me that I look forward to just having that step up.
Darren, I remember talking to Colin Hart, and he said the thing you should look for in a prospect making it to world level is the ability to finish a shot and power. Do you think that's like a crucial ingredient when you get to this level? You can be a nice fighter, but as soon as you get a tough Mexican or something, you've got to be able to sting them, haven't you?
Yeah, you've got to stop them in their tracks. Absolutely. Yeah, like I say, you've got to be able to hold a shot. You've got to be able to take a shot. Look, no one wants to take a shot, but you will. As you go through the rounds, you're doing 12 rounds, you're stepping up quality. It's inevitable. You're going to get caught. But you've also got to be able to stop your opponent ploughing forward. It's a must.
Round 6, final round. Darren, you've been brilliant on this tonight, by the way. About your own, the company you work for, Dazn, and they rising to the top.
Yeah, look, I just think it's remarkable because I'll be honest, you know, when they first were mentioned and I heard about them, I was excited by the prospect of it, but unsure if it would work. You know, you got the might of Sky TV, terrestrial TV had obviously moved away from boxing, and you think, oh, okay. But the way that they've come around and the way that they produce shows and the way that they've invested in boxing, I mean, it just shows you, one, how great boxing is as a product, how, you know, boxing's always held stood the test of time, and it always will. And DAZN, I think, are proof of that they're looking to, you know, remain in this sport for a long time. The fact that Eddie and Frank are working together, bar His Excellency in Saudi, is a big part of it. Is DAZN. You know, obviously Frank Warren, a legend of boxing, not just in this country, you know, Hall of Famer promoter, he sees the value in it. So I don't know about you guys, but I think it's very, very exciting times for boxing.
Yeah, they are at the top. I mean, I paid 90 quid in December for the year. They've now got Eddie and Frank on there. I mean, Eddie's global brand seems to be mushrooming. Frank's really, is here, mate, is massive. I mean, and he's talking of going to America. They've got those too. But it's the content you're getting. I mean, you're getting GBM shows. They've got show this Saturday, even from Dublin this Saturday. Yeah. It's just incredible what they're doing there. And this isn't a criticism. The one problem they got, or not a problem, the headache that could be a problem, is they've got to have to do pay-per-views to make money. They're a business. They want to turn into a profit-making organisation. I think the non-boxing fan in this country needs convincing how you get there for pay-per-views, because everyone just, if there's a pay-per-view, is it on Sky? And I think that's the thing they've got to do is get that person who isn't necessarily the non-boxing fan on board.
Yeah. The thing I liked about Weekend,
but they are at the top. They are number one because they've got everything.
Yeah. The thing I liked about Weekend is how everything's keeping its own character. Yeah. Everything's not becoming a Dazn show. It's a different feel to a Queensbury show than a Matchroom show, and I'm pleased that everyone's getting to keep the way. But the big worry is, I suppose, you need people to be subscribing to Dazn to create stars. We might see these fighters on Dazn and think they're great, but we need the general public to see them. But that comes around in time, doesn't it?
And you know what I loved as well? They're not doing interviews for 10 minutes after every fight. They'll go to someone in between a round. That's brilliant. It was very quick the other night. You might have the presenter with Carl Frampton for 2 minutes of sound bites and then bang, straight to the MC, yourself, Adam and Barry. I thought that was really good the other night.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Really enjoy, I think they're conscious of people in the venue. If you're sat there on your seat in the arena, you want to rattle through the show, don't you? You can't see what's going on at home. So I think they're ticking boxes. But I'm proud to be a part of a brilliant company, full of good people. And as I said at the start of this podcast, I'm living the dream. We all are. We all are.
Hey, you know what? I always say how lucky I've been. I'll say this every week on it. I've been working this since 1989, this sport, and been so kind to me. You can't have, wouldn't have a word against it. Very kind to me. Take nothing for granted, like yourself, Darren.
I was 7, Steve.
7. And I'm 63 now. Anyway, Darren, you've been a marvellous guest. I'm going to tell Barry Jones you were better than him, and because you were.
Never.
And John, thanks as always. And thanks everyone for listening, watching, and Darren's been brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody.
For all boxing info, news and latest interviews, amateur and pro, across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.